Hey guys, this is Mitch with FindPoint CGI, and today we talk about how to create your own panel inside of Godot. So we're kind of continuing our little tool discussion where before we made a custom node, now we're actually making a panel inside of Godot. And that panel that we're making is going to be a small task manager. So we're going to go through the process of creating a panel. We're going to talk about how to create our own scenes for that panel. And then we're going to actually run through the process of creating a task manager. So we're going to create our list object. We're going to make it so that we can load and save our list on Godot closing and opening. And we do a little bit of debugging here and there. So that's what I have to start for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we got to talk about is what is a dock plugin in Godot. So a docked plugin is basically a panel here inside of Godot that you can actually interact with and run scripts from. So it's really, really useful if you had like a bunch of scripts that you want to run in your editor. You can create a small panel that kind of does it, but it doesn't just stop there. You can actually do anything that you want in a panel that you can inside of your game engine, inside of your actual game. You can do anything, right? So if you wanted to, you could code the entire game of Snake in a little panel on this side if you really, really wanted to. Or if you wanted to, you could code a an audio visualizer or a sound generation system right here in Godot. So that's some of the cool things that I've seen people do using plugins with Godot. So what we're first going to do is we're just going to create a small button and we're going to get that to work, and then we'll go from there. So what we'll do is we'll go up to project, we'll go to project settings, then we're going to go ahead and click create, and you'll see that I had my previous plugin from my tutorial, I think it was like last week or the week before. And what we'll go ahead and call it task manager. And then our subfolder is going to be task manager. We don't really have a description, and I'm just going to go ahead and stick with the defaults for the author and version. And just like with our previous tutorial on how to create a node, you can actually choose whatever language you would like. In my case, I'm going to go with GDScript. And remember, if you do choose C#, which C# is a great language for creating scripts, it will not work in non-C# versions of Godot. So that is something to keep in mind. And for script name, I'm going to call it taskmanager.gd. We'll go ahead and click create, and you'll see that it already created us a script. Now, this script has a few things different than your usual script. So you see it has tool right here. And what this means for Godot is it means that we can run our script in the editor. Okay. And you'll see that it extends from editor plugin, and the editor plugin subset of code is all the things that you might need to create a editor plugin, hence the name editor plugin. Function enter tree is code that runs when your plugin is enabled. That includes when Godot opens. And exit tree is when you close Godot or uncheck the plugin from your project panel here. So if you check this or uncheck this, it will run enter tree and exit tree. So first, let's go ahead and create our little dock. So first, we need to create a variable for our dock. So let's come up here and say var dock. And let's say dock is equal to preload. And we need to load a scene. Now, we don't actually have a scene built yet, so we're going to need to build one. So let's go ahead and create a user interface scene here. We'll right-click that control node, add in a child node, and we'll add in a button. And we'll just kind of make it, I don't know, about yay big, give or take. Now I'm going to save this. I'm going to go into my add-ons folder, and I'm going to go ahead and drop it into my task manager. And we'll call it task manager scene.tscn. And then we will go back to our script. So we'll go back to the script, and we will go ahead and type task manager scene. We'll double click that. And then we'll say .instance, and that will work great for us. Now we need to go ahead and tell it where to place our control, right? Where to place our dock. Now you can place it anywhere in the scene. If you don't tell it where to place it, what it's going to do is it's going to instance it into memory, but it's not going to actually show up on your screen. So we'll say add control to dock. Now, you do have other options here. You can see we have add control to bottom panel, which is this panel. Add control to dock, which is these side panels here. And then we have add control to container, which is up here at the top. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and add control to dock, and then we're going to go ahead and say dock slot left BR, comma, and then we got to pass in our dock. So we'll go ahead and pass that in. Now, what this is it's where it's located inside of the dock. So we'll say dock's left BR is right here on the left in this area. You have BR, UL, and UR, and BL. So bottom left, bottom right, upper left, upper right. Upper left will actually create a separate panel on this side, so it'll actually create a new panel. Upper right will actually create it right here. Bottom left will create it right here, and bottom right will create a new panel over here on the bottom right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do upper right like that. So dock slot left, upper right, which will be this little panel right here. And what we'll do is get rid of that little parentheses, and we will go ahead and save. Now, from here, we need to remove the controls from the dock when you uncheck your plugin. So we'll come in here and we'll say remove control from dock. And then we need to free our dock. So we'll say dock.free. And what that's going to do is that's going to remove it from memory. If we don't do that, what it will do is it will just keep it in memory. Even though it's removed it from the actual interface, it'll still exist in memory. And that's something that we're going to have to keep in mind. So now if we go up to our project, we go to project settings, and we click on our task manager and disable it and then re-enable it, you will notice that we have a thing right up here called control. But that's weird, right? Because our scene is called task manager scene. So you'd think it would say task manager scene, but that's not the case. So the way Godot works is that it creates this little panel and it uses this as its name. So if we change this to task manager, and then we go to project settings, and we disable and enable it, and we save, and we go up to project settings, disable it and enable it, you will notice that when I hit the over arrow, you will see we have a task manager here. So that's something to keep in mind. I'll pull this over a little bit. We can click on our scene. You can see task manager and our button. And the nice thing is now we can click this little button, but you'll see that nothing really happens, right? Nothing seems to happen at all. Well, the reason why is because we need to connect our button to something, right? When we click on it, we need it to do something. So let's first add some text to our button, and let's say add task. And then let's right click our task manager. Let's attach a script and call it task manager scene. And we'll go ahead and click create. And if we go back to our button, we go to our node and we say on button down, task manager on button down. So we make sure we link that signal. We go ahead and click connect. You will see that we have our function right here. So what we'll do is we'll come in here and we'll say print create task. Okay. And then we'll come up here to our project settings. We'll go ahead and disable our our task manager, and we'll go ahead and enable our task manager. And then we'll click close and then go to our task manager, and you'll see that we have our little button here. Now, if I click on our button, you'll see that nothing seems to be happening. So why is that? Well, the reason why is because we are trying to execute code here in the editor. And the thing about Godot is that you can't execute code in the editor unless your code is a tool. Unless your script is considered tool to Godot, it's not going to execute in the editor. So if we come up here and we come in here and we type tool and we save this and we go to our project settings, we disable our task manager and re-enable it and then close it. When we come over here and we click add task, you will see that now our button works. Now I know immediately what's going on in your head. You're super excited to see all the cool stuff that you can do with this. Your brain is swimming with all the cool things that this opens up. And believe me, I understand it's really cool because it means that you can extend the Godot editor to do whatever you want, which is really cool. So with that, let's go ahead and build a small task management tool. So it's basically something that you can just kind of put some tasks in, maybe check it off the list and maybe set it as urgent or something like that. And I can also show you guys how to do like a pop-up window or something like that, right? So let's go ahead and build that and we'll see how this goes. So what we'll do is we'll come over to our scene. We'll go ahead and click on our task manager. We'll right click it, add in a child node, and let's go ahead and add in a scroll container. And a scroll container is going to allow us to scroll up and down if the task list gets way too long. So we'll go ahead and create a scroll container. We'll go ahead and click on layout full rect so that way it can be the full screen width here. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and right click our scroll container, add in a child node, and let's go ahead and add in a VBox container. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll drag that button down into our VBox container. And let's go ahead and make sure that signal is still hooked up. It looks like it is, so that's good news. And let's go ahead and make our VBox container have a control node inside of it. That way we can have our little task. So we'll go ahead and right click our VBox container, add in a child node, and let's add in a control node. Now we're going to right click it, add in another child node. We'll go ahead and add in we'll go ahead and put in a line edit. So we'll double click that and you'll see we have a small little line edit here. We're going to right click our control node, add in another child node. Let's add in a check box so we can check off our objects from our to-do list. So we'll just kind of pull this over here. And if we go to our line edit and add in something small so we can see how much we want to show. So if we kind of pull this off, we'll say test text is too large. I think I spelled too wrong, to be honest. TOO. And we'll just kind of pull this over like that. And we will grab our checkbox and put it right here. And then let's go ahead and create a button to trash this little task list, right? So we'll go ahead and right click it, add in a child node, add in a button. And then let's kind of drag this over here and we'll go ahead and say T for trash. Awesome. So now we need to make this actually stay within its bounds, because if we don't and we go ahead and save this and then go to project settings and disable and re-enable our task manager, you'll notice that when we click on our task manager, you'll see that our test text is 2, but it doesn't have the rest of our words. And the reason why is because this is getting crunched by the sizing of Godot. So what we can do to help that is we can go ahead and click on our scene, go into our line edit, tell it to have a keep ratio, do the same thing with our checkbox, keep ratio, and then we can do the same thing with our button, keep ratio, and that should help us with keeping our stuff together. So if we go to our project settings and we go ahead and disable our task manager and re-enable it, and then go to our task manager, you'll see that we have our entire text as we expect. And we got to do the same thing with our button. So let's go ahead and grab that and let's go ahead and make it a little bit larger, providing that it allows me to. I'm probably going to need to go into my rect and change my size. So we'll do something like maybe 200. I I think 200 might be just about right. So we'll do something like 190. And I think that will be enough. Now that we have this, let's go ahead and right click our control node. Let's rename it to a task list object and hit enter. Right click on it and go ahead and save branch as scene. So let's go ahead and do that and call it a task list object. And when you're making a add-on in Godot, you want to make sure that it is all in the same folder. So if we go to add-ons, task manager, and then we can go ahead and save this in here. And the reason why is because it makes it a lot simpler for us to work with. Okay. And you'll see our button got messed up a little bit. And I think that's just because of how our minimum size is set up. So if we set this to like 100 or maybe 190, but you'll see that it kind of messes with our task list object. So we're probably going to need to go into our task list object, and let's go ahead and branch this out. Yeah, it's because of this. So let's go ahead and make our task list object 190. And then let's go ahead and do a keep ratio. And then let's go ahead and change these guys back down to the proper size and readjust them all, because I forgot that when you do this in Godot, it gets funky. So let's go ahead and drag this over. And if anybody has any idea of how to make this better, please let me know in the comments below, because sometimes Godot's interface stuff really upsets me because it doesn't always work the way I'd like it to. There we go. So now if we come back to our task manager scene, that's about right, I want to say, but I'm curious if we can make this just a touch bit bigger, or is that going to mess with that? It is going to mess with that. So let's come in here, pull this in just a touch, and pull this in just a tiny bit as well, and that'll get everything to kind of match up pretty well. So let's go ahead and get this to instance our tasks. So what we'll do is we'll come into our task manager, and first we got to get a reference to our scene, right? So we're going to say export var task scene. And then we can go ahead and say as a packed scene. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to basically just pass in our packed scene and instance that. So then we'll come down here and we will go ahead and run our instance code. Now this works just like any other instance code in Godot. So what we'll do is we will go ahead and say var current task is equal to task scene.instance. And then we'll go ahead and say $vbox container dot add child current task. And then we need to come up to our task manager and drag our task list object to our task scene. Now, if everything has been done correctly, if we hit project settings, we disable our task manager, we re-enable our task manager, we click close, and then click on that. First, you'll notice that this is slightly off, so we might need to look at that. But our checkbox works, our button seems to work. We can type our stuff here if we want to. And if we click add task, you will see that our tasks are being added. But you'll notice that A, it's added kind of funky, and B, you'll notice that again, this is kind of scrunched together. So let's fix that. Let's come over to our task list object. Let's go to our scene, click on our task list object, and let's go ahead and change this to keep ratio and change our minimum size Y to 22 and our maximum size to 190, or our minimum size to 190 on the x-axis. So now if we come over here and we take a look at our button, which should also have similar rules, 190, and we should probably say 20, that will stop it from getting too crunched for our liking. Now, if we come over to our project settings, let's disable our task manager and re-enable it, and then go ahead and click. When we start adding in our tasks, you'll see that we have our tasks, which is great. Now, again, we're still having a little bit too much crunching going on for my liking. And the reason why is because we need to actually increase the spacing between these objects. Now, if we go to our scene and we go ahead and click on our task list object and let's just duplicate it a few times, you'll see that our spacing is not very great. You'll see that it doesn't quite match up with how we would expect. So what we can do is we can come over to our VBox container. We can scroll down here until we get to something, I believe it's theme overrides. Click on separation, and then let's just kind of up our separation just a little bit to help get this into where we want it to be. And then we also can come to, I believe it's under size flags, and let's go ahead and say expand. And what that's going to do is that's going to expand to the entirety of our rect. So it's going to go until our scroll container matches. So if we kind of bring our scroll container over here, you might not need to do that. You might need to do that. But if I basically just set my scroll container to full rect and make sure that my VBox container is correct, you'll see that's going to match that entire thing. So now if we Control S and save, and then we click on our project settings, disable our task manager and re-enable it, and then we come to our task manager, you'll see that now this matches. If I bring this out or I bring this close, you'll see that it just kind of works. Now you'll notice that once you push it too far though, it stops working 100%. And that value is whatever value you have your VBox container and your task list objects set to for their minimum size. So if you have this set to something like 20, when this gets dragged over, it should only go to about 20 or so. So if I delete these guys, I look at my VBox container, make sure that none of my minimum sizes. So if I set this to like 0 and 0, and I set this to, let's say, I don't know, let's see, definitely not 10, not 20, not 50, let's say 190. I think 190 is going to be a good number. So we'll see 190. That's fine. So we'll say the minimum size is 190 here. And if we go to project settings, disable our task manager, and then we go to task manager, you'll see that we can pull this back until it gets to that point, and then it stops us from going any further. All right, so the next big thing that we need to add is the next big thing that we need to do is we need to make it so that when we hit the check mark, that this goes kind of like a green color, and that if we hit the T button, it destroys this object. So we're just going to say like it's the trash button, right? It removes our task. So what we'll do is we'll go to scene, we'll go to our task list object, click on our scene, right click on our task list object. Let's go ahead and attach a script, and let's just call it task list object.gd and hit create. We're going to go to our button and just call this trash button. And then we're going to go ahead and go to our node button down and go to our task list object. And then if that gets pressed, just type Q free, and that will go ahead and delete our task. Now, if we hit the check mark box, we're going to need to basically set this object's theme to be green, right? So first, what we need to do is we need to say on toggled, let's do a thing. So we'll go ahead and double click on toggled, and let's go ahead and connect that. And we'll say if pressed, then we're going to go ahead and set our theme, right? Now, it's going to be a bit difficult to set up our theme. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say export var completed theme, and we'll go ahead and say that is a theme. And what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and save that. We'll go to our if pressed, and we'll say if pressed $line edit dot theme is equal to completed theme, else $line edit dot theme is equal to default theme. And what we'll do is we'll come up here and we'll say var default theme is a theme. And we'll come in here and we'll say default theme is equal to $line edit dot theme, and that will pull back our theme. Now, first, if pressed doesn't work, I need if button pressed, so that should work now. And we're going to need to create a theme for this. So let's go to our checkbox. Let's go to our inspector. And let's come down here to our theme, click on our theme, create a new one, click on our theme, and then let's go ahead and hit the plus icon, go to check. Actually, I think it's line edit, not checkbox. Line edit, and then hit OK. And then what we're going to do is we need to set its normal right here underneath our theme heading. We'll set its normal to a new style box flat. And then we'll go ahead and click on that, and we will change this to a greenish color. So something like that probably. And then what we'll do is we'll go back to our theme. So it has to say theme right here. And then we'll come up here, hit save, and we will call this completed theme. .tres, and then we will go to our task list object. We'll come over here, we'll drag our completed theme into our completed theme. And then if we control S this and we go to project settings, and we go ahead and shut off our task manager, turn it back on, go to our task manager and type our text. We hit the check mark. It doesn't look like anything happened. If we hit the T, it also doesn't look like anything happened. If I add a task, doesn't seem to be working, so that's always a good sign. So let's see, do we have any errors? I figured out what's going on. So if we come up here to our extends, we need to tell this to be a tool, or else it's not going to run in the editor. That's my fault. So let's go to project settings, get rid of our task manager, put our task manager on, go in here, hit the check mark, and you'll see that it's turned green to indicate that we've completed it. And then if I hit the T button, you'll see that it deletes it. So if I add a task, I add a couple tasks, task, and maybe say something like, complete this task. If I click on it, you'll see that it's now green. If I click on test task, you will also see that it's green. And then if I hit the T button, it deletes it. Simple enough. Awesome. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a save and load system for our little tasks. So what we'll do is we'll first come into our task list object script here. We're going to create a var, and we'll say current text, and we'll go ahead and equal that to an empty string. And then we'll go ahead and say var completed is equal to false in this case, because right now it's not going to be completed by default. And then down here, what we'll do is we'll say if button pressed completed is equal to true. And then we'll come down here and also say completed is equal to false. And we need to do this because we need to tell our system what our current text is that the user put in, and we need to be able to tell whether or not we've completed it. Right, so that we can save that out to like JSON or something like that. Now, what we can do from here is we can go ahead and save, go back to our scene, and go to our task list scene that we have. And on line edit, let's go ahead and go to our node and say on text changed maybe, or maybe on text entered. We can try text entered. Let's double click that and hit connect. And then let's just say, I'm curious what this is going to return. So we can say current text is equal to new underscore text. Let's go ahead and hit Control S on that. And let's print our current text. That way we have an idea of what we are getting ourselves into here. So go ahead and go to project settings. Let's disable our task manager, re-enable it, close task manager. Let's delete this and say test and hit enter. That does work. Let's try test 2 and click off. You'll see that test 2 didn't fire off, but test did. And it looks like we have to hit enter for it to be able to fire that off. So I guess this is more of a dealer's choice if we want to make it so that they have to hit enter for us to save their data, or if we don't care about that and we're just going to try to save their data as it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the latter. I don't care if they hit enter or not. So I'm going to disconnect this method and just do it on text changed. And let me kill this bit of code. So we'll copy this and we'll paste it in here, and then we'll delete this bit of code here. And then let's go to project settings, disable our task manager, enable it. And then let's go back to our task manager. Let's delete this and type test text. And you'll see that as we type it in, it automatically fills that in, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So now that we have these references to these two objects, we can basically go and fetch this data, when we want to save our data out. So what we'll do is we'll go to our task manager scene here, and we'll go ahead and say func_exit tree, and this gets fired when we disable our add-on. Remember, when we click that little checkbox saying that add-on is done, that's when this gets fired. So what we'll do is we'll say on exit tree, let's go ahead and save our stuff. So we'll say var file is equal to file.new, because we're creating a new file because we want to save our data out. And we need to get back our data. So we'll go ahead and say $, and I'm going to go ahead and go over to my task manager here, which has that script attached to it. You'll see right here. And we'll say $, scroll container dot vbox container dot get children, and we'll need to pass that back into a var. So we'll say var children is equal to scroll container / vbox container dot get children, and then we'll say for child in children, then let's go ahead and say child, and then we need to go ahead and get some kind of dictionary to pass this data into. So we'll come up here and we'll say var saved data is equal to open brace and close brace. And what that's going to do is that's going to give us some kind of data set for us to put our data into. And what we'll do is we'll say saved data, open brace, close brace, quote, and we need to get some kind of a string here. So we'll go ahead and just pass in child dot, I don't know if we have, let me see if we have a unique value here that we can get away with. So since we don't have a unique value here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say var I is equal to 0, and I'm just going to say quote task plus str I, and then we will go ahead and say is equal to, and we'll do another dictionary inside of this, and we're going to say quote tech colon, and then we'll say child dot, and we got to look at our task list object, current text, child dot current text, and then we will say comma quote completed, and I want to do a lowercase c here, colon space child dot completed. And that should, let me check, current text completed, yep. And that should basically do it for that. And then once we get done with our child in children, we run through our children, and we pull back our saved data, what we're going to do is we're going to need to make that into JSON data. So what we can do is we can say file dot open, and we need to give it a path to open, right? So what we can do is we can say quote user colon slash slash, and I'm just going to throw tasks dot save, and then we need to go comma and say file dot write, and that's going to allow us to write our file. And now we need to pass in some data to save. So what we'll do is we'll say file dot store var, and we need to pass in some kind of var. So we'll pass in saved data, comma, and it says full objects, and I'm going to go ahead and say true. And that's just going to save any full objects that this object has. And then we'll go ahead and say file dot close. And that should, in theory, work. So let's go ahead and close our task manager, turn our task manager on, and then let's go to our task manager. Test text is too large. That's fine. So we'll say test text, and we'll set it to completed. And then we'll go to project settings. We're going to disable our task manager. And we do have an invalid index on get current text. So that's not good news on our button base. Let's see. That's because we're pulling back our children, and it is pulling back our button because our button is part of our list here. You can see right here. So we have one of two choices. We can either pull this out or uniquely identify this object. Now, the nice thing is that we've already kind of uniquely identified this. So what we can do is we can just say if child is, then we can say continue. Or if we want to, we can also say not child is button, and then we can also pass this. It's up to you on which one you prefer. I guess I'll go with not child is button. And then let's go ahead and save this. Go to project settings, enable our task manager, close it, go to task manager, test text, and we'll go ahead and set that to true. And then go to project settings, disable our task manager, and you will see that we also got a fail here. Invalid close. Did you mean close? I did. I forgot my little parentheses here. So now if we go to enable, and then we go back to our task manager and go test text, and then we go to project settings, and we close it, and then we close it. If we go out to our project and then we go out to our open project data folder, you'll see that there's a tasks.save. If I open this with Visual Studio Code, you'll see that we get some binary data, but we do get some information. See this? So we should be able to pull this data back and use it directly. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead, and I'm just going to move this out of the way so you guys don't have to deal with it. I'm going to go ahead and load that data. So we'll say on ready, let's load that data, right? So we'll say var file is equal to file.new, and then we'll say if file.file exists, and we need to set a path for it. So in my case, I'm just going to set it to this path, and you guys can set it to whatever path you would like. Then file.open, and we'll go ahead and pass in that path again, comma, file dot read. And that's going to allow us to read that data back. And now what we can do is we can go ahead and pull our objects back. So we'll say var children is equal to file dot get var true. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull back all of our children objects. And then we'll go ahead and print this. So we'll say print children, and we'll say file.close And that should about do it for us. So now if we go to our project settings and we enable this, you will see that we get our task 0 completed false test text. So that's perfect, right? So now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and create a task, right? So what we can do is we can come down here and say func create task, and we will pass in our completed comma text, and we'll go ahead and say var current task is equal to task scene dot instance, much like we did just right up here. And then we can go ahead and do the exact same thing. So our scroll container code, I don't know why I'm not just copying it. And then we can say current task dot, and from here we can basically pull our current text is equal to our text, and we can say current task dot completed is equal to completed. All right. And now that we have all of this done, what we can do is we can tell our task to set those values. So we'll come over here to our task list object. We'll come down here and we'll say func set task information. And what we'll do is we will go ahead and set our task list information. So we'll say $line edit dot text is equal to current text, and $checkbox dot pressed is equal to completed. And then we can go back to our task manager or our task manager scene, and we can say current task dot, and we will use our set task information. There we go. I want to make sure that this is correct, so I'm just going to copy this. And we'll go ahead and paste that just in case. And now if I come over to our project, if I get rid of our task manager, I come up to our project settings, and I shut off task manager, I turn it back on, and I close it, you will see that we got nothing back. And the reason why is because there was no data in our set here. So we'll set this to test text, check it, and then go to project settings, shut off our task manager, turn it back on, close, go to our task manager, and you'll see that it seems like it didn't work. And that's probably because I'm crazy and I forgot to call it down here, didn't I? Yes, I did. So we will come up here and we will say, and now we have to get our create task code running, right? So we'll go up to the top up here and we will say for key in my children. Then I'm going to want to go ahead and pull back that data set. So what I'll do is I'll say create task children key dot completed comma children key dot text. And if I remember correctly, that's how it's going to be. Let me double check. Completed in text, that's correct. And I think that was what the structure was for our system as well. I believe it was lowercase c. So we'll go ahead and go to our task manager, set our first value. So we'll say test text, and we'll go ahead and set that to completed. We'll go to project settings. We'll disable our task manager, re-enable it. And you'll see that we haven't gotten any errors or anything. We go back to our task manager, and there is our completed test text with our value. Awesome. So if we come here and we get rid of this guy, so it's no longer there, and we disable and re-enable our project, you'll see that we still get back our nodes like we would expect. If we remove both of our nodes, we go to project settings, disable our task manager, re-enable it, and you will see that it is empty. So perfect. So if we add our tasks and we start typing stuff, we have test our plugin, and then we add in another text and we say remove our plugin, and then we do another one and we say has a spacing issue, which we'll have to look at. If we take all of these things, we go to project settings, we disable our task manager and re-enable it. So we closed Godot and we reopened it. If we come into our task manager, we only got a single object, which means that our saving code is broken. So let's take a look. So the reason why our task isn't working is because right here we're setting our task to I. And the problem with us setting our task to I is that it's only going to be task 0 here. So what we need to do is we need to say I plus equals 1. And what that's going to do is that's going to allow us to number our tasks properly. So now if we go to our project settings, we disable it, enable it, close, go to our task manager, add a task and say test task, add another task and say our task list is too scrunched, and we go ahead and check mark our test task, and then we go to project settings, we disable our task manager, so we closed Godot and then we reopen it. It should pull back our 2 tasks. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. I can't believe I forgot about that. So now our task list is a little scrunched. I don't know if you've noticed. And even if we set our VBox container to a offset here, you'll see that even with our offset, it doesn't seem to make a difference, right? When we ran this, it seemed to not care. So what can we do to fix that? Let's go ahead and set this to a value that is pretty high. So let's set something like 30. Let's Control S and make sure you save, because if you keep forgetting to save, then you're going to be working on some old information. Let's go to project settings. Let's disable this, re-enable it, and let's check. And that's better. I think that's actually pretty good. Yeah, I think that'll work. So now we can scroll and we have all of our text. Nice. Awesome. So that's basically the ins and outs of creating your own little doc in Godot. So you can fill this with all sorts of code that you're looking for, and you can basically make and extend Godot, which is really the thing I wanted to drive home, was that we can extend Godot and make it better. And then you guys can go ahead and throw it out into the asset library for all of us to use. So I really hope that you guys use this information to help contribute to Godot to just make it better. Hey guys, Editor Mitch here. So I completely forgot to show you guys how to do a pop-up in your plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how to do that. So we'll come over here and we'll bring down our task manager, and we will go ahead and go to our task manager scene here. And what we'll do, that's kind of funny that it shows that, but we'll go to our task manager scene, and what we'll do is we'll right click it, add in a child node, and let's add in a pop-up. And then we'll go ahead and right click, add in a child node, and let's add in a color rect, and that's going to allow us to color our background of our pop-up. Now, if we enable our pop-up right here, now we can see it. And let's go ahead and make it about, I don't know, about yay big, give or take, and we'll put it at about the center of the screen. So we'll just click layout and we'll go and do center. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of adjust this so it's the right size. We're going to make our color rect full rect as well. And I'm going to make that not this color because white is not great for this. We'll just make it the Godot blue, just like that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click my pop-up. I am going to go ahead and add a child node. I am going to make it a label right here. and we'll kind of zoom in here and drag this down. We'll put it somewhere in this area, and we'll just say name of task. And then we'll come in here, we'll right click, add in another child node. Let's add in a rich text label. And let's just kind of make it somewhere in here. We'll just put it like that. Just like that, I think. And then we'll go ahead and grab a pop-up, right click it, add in a child node, and let's add in a check button like that. We'll go ahead and drag this down here, make it about so big. And for our text, we'll just say urgent. And for our rich text label, we might want to put a different background color on it because it looks like the color is not exactly ideal for what we're trying to do. And I'm curious if the color actually matters, or is it gonna, no, I guess it doesn't really matter. So what I'll do is I'll just remake it that Godot blue like that. And actually, let's make it the light blue. I think the light blue looks better. And we'll go back to our rich text label. And we'll go to our theme overrides right here, go to our styles normal and change that to a style box flat. And then let's go to BG color and let's change that to a dark Godot color, and that will work. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click my pop-up and do add child node, add in a button. And we'll go ahead and put that over here, and we will control duplicate that button, and we're going to drag it over here. And our first button is going to be our create, and our second button is going to be our cancel. All right. And now what we'll do is we will go ahead and go to our cancel button. We're going to go ahead and say on button down. Let's link that to our task manager, and same thing with our create, on button down to our task manager. And for our create button, let's go ahead and set our text to create. And for our cancel button, let's set our text to cancel. All right, now if we go back to our task manager code here, on cancel button down, hit $pop-up dot hide. And that's going to go ahead and hide that pop-up. So if we were to be putting stuff in there, we can just hide it. And on create, instead of us doing our on button down create task, let's go ahead and just grab that code, get rid of this, and then just paste it in here. And instead, we'll just say $popup.show, and that will show our pop-up. So now when you click on our little add task button, it's going to pop up our pop-up. And then when we click the create button on our pop-up, it's going to create a task, okay? And what we need to also do is we need to also show our task, right? So what we can do is instead of having this little bit of code here, actually, what we can do is we can say create task. And what we can do is we can say $pop-up check button dot pressed. And that's going to check if it's been pressed. And then we can say comma $pop-up rich text label dot text. And that'll go ahead and create our task much like we were doing when we were loading. So that will solve our create task issue that we were running into, right? So now all of our code goes through this little bit of code, and that's it. Instead of before we had this section of code in two separate spots, now it's in one spot, which is good. So we'll hit Control S, make sure we save, and then we'll go to project settings, go out to our plugins, disable our task manager and re-enable it, go over to our task manager, hit add task, and you will see that we have our task. Now, our stuff's a little funky, and I'll show you how to fix that in a second, but let's see what happens if we click on our text label, and it doesn't seem to allow us to do anything. So if we hit cancel, let's take a look at this and see if I made something broken. Oh, I did rich text label, that's my fault. So change the type to a line edit instead. That's my fault. And now let's go ahead and test this. But before we test this, let's fix our formatting here. So if we go to our pop-up, we change our layout to keep ratio, and then we go to our label, and we keep our ratio, rich text label, we do the same thing, keep our ratio, check button, keep our ratio, and the other two do the same thing, keep ratio as well. So everything, just set everything to keep ratio. And then if we go to our project settings, task manager, disable it, enable it, hit close, go to our task manager, add task. You'll see that now it kind of keeps our scale a little bit better. And we can say test task. We can click create, and you'll see that it creates a task. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. So that's kind of how you do a pop-up, which is really cool, right? So now what we can do is we can come back to here, and we can go ahead and set up our urgent. So you'll see that actually I think I have it as our pressed as our check button instead. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and grab this bit here, and we will say false, comma, and we'll just pass this in here, and then we'll say comma urgent. And then we can go ahead and say current task dot urgent is equal to urgent. And we'll set our task information. We'll go back to our task list. We're going to add a var urgent is equal to false. And then we'll come down here, and we're doing our set task information. What we can do is we can say if urgent, then we'll go ahead and set our theme to a special theme. So we'll go ahead and say $line edit dot theme is equal to our urgent theme. And we don't have an urgent theme, so I'm going to have to make one. So we'll say urgent theme, and then we'll say default theme is equal to urgent theme. There we go. So that way we can kind of mess around with our stuff. Now we don't have an urgent theme, so we'll come up here and we will say export var urgent theme : theme. There we go. And that should solve all of this. We're still setting our default theme here, so that should work. And if we go back to our task list object, and we need to set our urgent theme. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate my completed theme, and I'm going to change it to urgent theme. And then we'll come down to our urgent theme, we'll double click on it, and we're just going to change it to a red color. So we'll go to our style box, and I'll just change this to a red color like this. And then what I will do is I will go to my task list object. I will drag in our urgent theme, Control S. And I think we only need to go back to our load code here because it says too few arguments here. Children key completed, children key dot text, comma, children key dot urgent, and then we'll need to adjust our code here to also pull that back. So we'll say comma quote urgent child dot urgent. And that should, in theory, do everything we need it to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go project settings. I'm going to disable my task manager. I'm going to load my task manager. And I am going to go ahead and take a look at my task manager. You'll see that we have a single task here. And I will go ahead and add in a task. I will say test task. I will say, yes, it's urgent, create. And you'll see that it's red. And then I can also say second task. It's not urgent, create. You'll see we have a second task. I will hit cancel. We'll say rest task, and I will complete that. We'll go to project settings. We will disable our task manager, enable it, close task manager, and there we go. So that's basically how we do pop-ups in our plugins. But that's all I have for you guys today. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video, as with all of my videos, was a viewer suggested video. So if you have a suggestion, please throw them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to get to it. It might take me a while. It might take, months depending on what's going on and how things are going, but I will get to it. And hey, if you guys have any questions about this or any of my other videos, throw them in the comments below or jump on the Discord and go ahead and ask. And anybody on that Discord is more than happy to help you out. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.